Elizabeth Prout. Who was she? Elizabeth Prout was born in Shrewsbury on the 2nd of September 1820, the only child of Anne and Edward Prout. Her mother was a staunch Anglican, her father a lapsed Catholic. Shrewsbury in Shropshire is a medieval walled town, almost completely surrounded by the River Severn. In the mid-19th century, it had a population of 24,000. Elizabeth would have known the 12th century Benedictine Abbey, St Mary's Church and St Julian's. Edward Prout, a skilled cooper, worked at the coal and brewery on the outskirts of the town. He earned a good wage and, like all brewery workers, had a free issue of beer.
Elizabeth was baptised on the 17th of September 1820 at St Julian's Anglican Church by Hugh Owen, the vicar. St Julian's today is a vibrant craft centre. Owen, a dynamic character, played a major role in both church and civic affairs. He was a friend to the poor, visited them in their homes, listened to their troubles, and worked hard to make Shrewsbury a better place to live in. This he did with great cheerfulness. Sitting with her mother in church, did little Elizabeth look around her with wonder at the stained glass windows, Christ with the children, Jesus baptized in the Jordan, the Last Supper. Was it here she learned her love for Christ and the poor? We can only guess, but we know nothing of Elizabeth's childhood and youth.
The only photograph we have of Elizabeth was taken when she was about 35. She is enveloped in a habit of heavy material. The photograph does not show that she was barely 5 foot tall, of fragile build, and with hands so tiny that her profession ring wouldn't even fit on the finger of an ordinary woman of the same height. A sister who knew her recorded that she was refined, intelligent, and gently nurtured. She knew nothing but the love of devoted parents, a comfortable and happy home, and bright prospects for the future.
Elizabeth celebrated her 21st birthday in 1841. By this time, the family were living in Stone, Staffordshire. Stone was a busy market town. It lay at the heart of England's road system. Constant streams of travellers stopped there. It had a thriving brewery industry and about 24 inns. All the inns were offering Jules ale, and most of them stayed open all night. A cooper, like Edward Prout, would have had no trouble getting a job in Stone. 1842 was a year of industrial and social unrest. There was so much lawlessness in Stone that year that 700 special constables had to be sworn in to keep order.
Elizabeth was living in Stone when Father Dominic Barbary founded the first Passionist monastery in England in Aston Hall. This was about 2 miles from Elizabeth's doorstep. Whenever Father Dominic walked through the town, gangs of youths pelted him with stones and mud. They hated and despised Catholics, especially foreigners in ridiculous clothes. At first, Father Dominic said Mass in a room in the Crown Inn at Stone. Later, he moved to the new church of St Anne's.
Dominic Barbary's arrival was a turning point in Elizabeth's life. She met him at a time when she was longing for some deeper spiritual reality. Her thoughts were turning to Catholicism, and she felt she must follow her conscience. This was a serious decision at a time of fierce anti-Catholic feeling. Effigies of the Pope were burned publicly on Guy Fawkes Night. It was dangerous to be a Catholic. To go over to Rome would involve immense sacrifices. And so it was. When Elizabeth became a Catholic, her parents disowned her.
Elizabeth's next step was again dramatic. In 1848, she entered the convent of the Infant Jesus in Northampton. Her parents were shocked. 6 months later, she developed a tubercular knee. The doctor said she would never walk again. She had to leave the convent. When Elizabeth returned to Stone, her mother nursed her so well that she walked again. But when she wished to go to Mass, the situation became so intolerable that she decided to leave home. This time, the decision was final.
Beggared and alone, Elizabeth made her way to Manchester, looking for work. Her immediate future was bleak. She talked it over with Father Gaudentius Rossi, a Passionist priest she had known in Stone. He had given a mission in St. Chad's. Father Crosskill, the parish priest, was looking for a schoolmistress. On his recommendation, Elizabeth got the job.
During the Industrial Revolution, huge populations swarmed to Manchester and the north of England, searching for work in the newly opened factories. Many were Catholic, famine refugees from Ireland. Here they lived, worked and slept in deplorable conditions. Children from the age of 5 worked long hours in the mills. They could neither read nor write. Thousands were without any religious instruction.
St. Chad's Parish in Angel Meadows was Manchester's worst slum. It was known as the lowest, most filthy, most unhealthy and most wicked locality in Manchester. Here Elizabeth taught, and in her spare time sought out the waifs and strays in the slums of the city, encouraging them to attend school. She was soon joined by young women attracted by her way of life. Living, working and praying together, this small group achieved a remarkable amount of good in the school, in the parish and in the workplace. In St. Chad's Parish, with the help of Father Gaudentius and Father Crosskill, Elizabeth founded a congregation of sisters who would bring the compassion of Christ to the suffering and deprived she saw all around her.
Sometimes a shuttle flies out, gives some poor woman a clout. There she lies bleeding, but nobody's heeding who's going to carry her out. Poverty, poverty.
Early in 1851, Elizabeth and companions rented a small house in Stock Street. Here they lived according to a fixed timetable of prayer and work under Elizabeth's direction. In this house, in simplicity, poverty and obscurity, the congregation of the Sisters of the Cross and Passion was born.
Well, this is one of the historic places, for our congregation, and in fact the cradle of our Passionist sisters. It was here to this city that we're looking at that Elizabeth came, and it was known as the shock city of the age in 1849. In this street here, Stock Street, she found lodgings. From the little house in number 58 Stock Street, she set out every day to walk to St. Chad's, limping because of her knee, her tubercular knee.
On the 21st of November 1852, the first sisters received the religious habit in St. Chad's Church. Elizabeth took the name Sister Mary Joseph. 2 years later, 6 were professed. Of these, only 2 persevered, Elizabeth Prout and Mary Taylor, both converts.
Elizabeth Prout's rule was different. There was no class distinction among her sisters. No dowry was required for admission. The sisters were to be self-supporting, doing any work in keeping with their religious state. At the time, this seemed revolutionary. Elizabeth was now offering religious life to anyone who felt called. Lack of money was no obstacle. This way of doing things gave rise to suspicion, endless calumny and constant criticism, all of which Elizabeth accepted as sharing in the passion of Christ.
What did Elizabeth Prout look for in her followers? A desire for self-surrender to God's love, devotion to our Lord in His passion, a spirit of selfless service. In the early years, the sisters served in Manchester, Levenshulme and Ashton-under-Lyme. In 1855, they went to Sutton, St. Helens. In 1864, they moved to Bolton, a large manufacturing town, where they taught in schools, established a teacher-pupil training centre and opened homes for factory girls. The congregation began small, but Elizabeth dreamed of an international missionary congregation, limited only by the limits of the earth. In 1855, Father Gaudentius was missioned to America. He was replaced by another Passionist priest, Father Ignatius, formerly George Spencer. His colourful life and conversion was front-page news in every English newspaper, under the heading Aristocrat Turned Monk.
During the next 10 years, the strong support of Father Ignatius was vital. It was the most critical period of Elizabeth's own life and the life of the infant congregation. Her faith and courage were put to the test. She suffered criticism, slander, betrayal, isolation, and financial ruin, brought about by people she trusted. During all this time, she followed the advice of a good friend.
Humble silence. When you are looked upon as dead, then you will rise again.
And this is what happened. She was not broken. Her work endured. Undaunted by opposition and wretched health, Elizabeth set about revising the rule of the congregation. The final draft was presented to Rome and approved in 1863. In August of that year, the Congregation of the Sisters of the Cross and Passion was canonically established in Manchester by Bishop Turner.
For both Elizabeth Prout and Father Ignatius Spencer, it seemed that their mission in life was over. Within weeks, Elizabeth fell gravely ill. She died as the Angelus bell was ringing at the convent in Sutton on the 11th of January 1864. Later that year, Father Ignatius, on a journey in Scotland, fell suddenly ill by the wayside and was found dead. In 1973, the remains of Mother Mary Joseph, Elizabeth Prout, were exhumed from St Anne's Cemetery, Sutton. She was buried nearby in the new St Anne's Church, beside Blessed Dominic Barbary and Father Ignatius Spencer. The church and shrine are now a place of pilgrimage.